All right, hello everyone. My name is Teresa Chan. I'm the Assistant Dean of the Program for Faculty Development within the Faculty of Health Sciences. I'm here today with a colleague and really a hero of mine from around these parts. She's been here for a while, but has always shared her expertise in medical education and health professions education more greatly with the world in many ways. So Karen, maybe you want to introduce yourself and kind of speak to who you are and what you're doing these days?
Thank you for your kind words, Teresa. Certainly the admiration is, we can join the Mutual Admiration Fan Club. So I'm a psychiatrist, a geriatric psychiatrist, and have been involved in education for most of my career as program director and associate chair education for my department, also nationally at the Royal College. I think I'm currently the vice chair of psychiatry at McMaster, and find myself with wellness as a portfolio. And during this unprecedented crisis, like everybody else, scrambling to find ways to help our colleagues, our learners, and the greater university community as a whole.
Excellent. Well, just to timestamp this for everyone who might be watching this at a later date, today is April the 6th, 2020, and we're in the middle of probably the beginning of the COVID pandemic outbreak here in Canada. And so that's just to contextualize what Karen was just saying, because some of you might be watching this later. And I think that this resource will probably still be useful later on. It just might not be at the scale that we'll need in the current pandemic. But I think that learning how to support your peers, which is the main topic of what we're going to talk about, maybe in the digital sense, maybe in a small group sense, eventually when we lift social isolation procedures, we will be able to kind of like use a lot of the same tools, I think, to come back to it. So Karen, my physician group, I'm an emergency physician. Obviously, we're frontline workers. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of, I guess we're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but that anxiety, it's probably very natural, right? Because I think that when you're waiting for something to happen, I think it's the same thing, butterflies before you got on stage, or, that fear that you have before you have to fight a den of lions, I guess. I don't know. These are different things that might give you that, you're amped up a little bit, but you're not sure why. And in this case, I think we know why. It's just that we're not sure when, and we're not sure how bad it's going to be. And so that anxiety is probably natural for us to feel, right?
Absolutely. And I think you highlight a really important point, in that the first task before us is to distinguish between somebody who has a significant mental illness, a disorder, as opposed to somebody who is experiencing anxiety as an understandable and natural and sometimes even important reaction to a crisis or a set of circumstances. So we're really talking, you and I, today about something more in the line of psychological first aid rather than treatment for somebody with an anxiety disorder.
Yeah, you're speaking my language now, I think. The idea that maybe we can empower everyone to think about what we're doing as that first responder kind of like screening process, where we can just support someone until the professionals get there. As an emerge doc, I mean, I think that even in the pre-hospital setting, if someone has a seizure in front of me, there's very little I can do other than call 911, look at the clock and see what time the seizure is started, and then be there to support when there's sequelae, right? Like I'm not running around with medications or a full complement of colleagues that can all spring into action. So I think that in the context of supporting our peers, even if you're not a clinician, I think you can participate in those first couple of encounters where it's just really more peer support, especially when it's so ubiquitously a problem. And I think that that's what we're here to talk about today, is a little bit of how can we support our peers a little bit better during times of crises, or during times of really kind of any kind of situation. Because even if it's not at the level that we're talking about today, wouldn't it be nice to just have peers to support each other on a regular basis? Maybe that's a good thing that can come out of all of this, is that we're going to band together better. What do you think?
I think so, and I think if there is a silver lining in terms of this crisis, that may definitely be one of the spin-off of benefits. And then the question becomes how, because we want to be available, be responsive, be receptive, We want to find that balance between providing information and not overwhelming people who are being bombarded with information from all sources. And what's the right forum? Would a sort of a drop-in group be the right way to support our colleagues and peers, much in the way that Dr. Mamta Gautam has provided a national drop-in group for physicians across the country? Would that be a good way to do that?
Yeah.
And if so, what are the right skills to be able to facilitate that and make it meaningful and useful and supportive?
Excellent. Yeah, I think hers is running right as we're actually recording this Zoom. So I'll have to tune in another day, but she's been doing it every day, which is amazing. She's a wonderful person for offering that service. So hopefully we can all kind of glean some usefulness out of that encounter if you so choose to sign up for that. But if not, it might be that you need to get together with a bunch of your friends and just have a chat. So it might not be even other healthcare providers. You might want to just actually book a Zoom. I guess I saw someone tweet about how it was, I think, Jake Tapper from CNN. He was like, I just had a Zoom with a bunch of my college buddies and we just all goofed around and made fun of each other and basically paraphrasing. And I'm like, he's like, if you haven't done it, I highly recommend it. And I'm thinking of doing the same thing with some of my old college or university friends. We were all group texting, but I'm like, we could all just pick a time and Zoom together. So I do think that there's kind of merit in creating those social networks that can support you, even though we're doing social distancing or maybe kept up in our own places, right?
Well, I think you make another good point, Teresa, and that is in the midst of all of this crisis where we as physicians, healthcare providers are trying to work either on the front line like you are or more in a supportive role, the way that I am, in our personal lives. How do we maintain some semblance of normalcy? How do we continue, for example, to have our book clubs virtually or to see our friends, to have a virtual dinner together, and to try and keep going with part of our routine of normal life that is possible.
Yeah, I know one of my friends, Alana, said that they're planning a Zoom-based Seder for Wednesday, which is Passover, which is amazing. And I've heard of friends also doing dinner parties where they send the recipes around and they all do the same recipe and then compare who did it best, kind of thing, which is kind of cute. It's kind of like Master Chef, home edition, you know.
So and those rituals, I try to read a bedtime story to my granddaughter every night. If possible, given that I can't do it in person.
Yeah, excellent. And so that's good for, supporting yourself as a healthcare provider or even a researcher or educator, whatever. I think as a person right now, we all need that support. On the flip side, I think we also need that support of our peers. So whether you're someone else who just had CIHR tell you that they canceled the spring session, which is super, super hard for a lot of our colleagues, or you're an educator and you've just had to convert all of your classes to online and aren't really sure, or if you're a leader and you feel really lonely because everyone's leaning on you and you don't have someone to lean on, or if you're a clinician and you just need to talk about that hard decision you had to make in the sea of all the other hard decisions you might have to make. I think that having someone that understands your wobbles and your woes are really important, because the clinician colleague might not get why CIHR is a big deal for you versus the other things, right? So I think we all have our preferences and we all have our leanings, as I like to say, in terms of what we do in our jobs as faculty. But I think it's also really important for us to have that space to kind of support each other. So what are some perspectives that you have for how to create that safe space? How do you kind of create a group like that? I know Dr. Wong is also doing something for anesthesia. I'm thinking of doing something on Wednesday as well with my group. What are some pearls that you can share?
So I think, first of all, that there is not a one size fits all for everybody. There are some instances where perhaps one-on-one might be the best fit. As a mental health provider, it is important, the point I made at the beginning, to distinguish people who really require treatment for a disorder and those who require support and peer support. So the ways to do it are providing people with information that they can access during their own time. So for the example you gave about teaching, making sure that we have good, robust, evidence-informed resources up and available for those who are having to cope with the stress of rapidly converting their modalities. What we're going to be starting tomorrow is a drop-in group for members of our department. And our department is quite heterogeneous in terms of professional backgrounds, and that may actually add to the strength of the group, and to use good facilitation skills in as much as we can. So to make sure that there's done a little bit of homework of posing the right questions, and that's from the feedback that people have given. We did start this process with a little bit of a short survey as kind of needs assessment. So we know a little about the priorities and that what people want to know about. We want to have a rough agenda, but also be flexible so that as the discussion evolves over an hour, that we can move and be nimble and inclusive of people's viewpoints. Mm-hmm. I think as a facilitator, it's important to be empathic and to be able to actively listen to what people are saying, and then use one's verbal skills to facilitate the conversation. Yeah. We're hoping not to have conflict, but in any group, you can have differences of opinion, and how to manage that conflict and move towards some form of consensus building, even if there is no defined outcome at the end of it. The other thing as a facilitator is to stay neutral and to try and hear all sides and bring things together, and try to sort of have an outcome for every one of these groups, even if it's not an absolute answer, but just to say it looks as though these are the themes that are important, and next time we can perhaps use that as a launching pad. So I think those are just some general facilitation skills. I think we can share some of the skills across departments so that everybody can learn from that.
Yeah. I think those are really, really key facilitation skills that we can use in any kind of situation, whether you're running a department like division meeting, or you're just sitting around with a bunch of your colleagues talking about a new protocol, right? So I think that we probably have a lot of people who have that skill set. You just have to transfer it over now to a different kind of domain. So that's reassuring. Mm-hmm.
Right, and to validate the fact that we are living through a frightening experience, and a worldwide frightening experience, and to acknowledge that fear and to try to move from there, and to break it down into small pieces that are manageable for people.
Yeah, I saw someone kind of post something on Twitter about how we can go from just letting the fear be an inhibitor to what we do, to being something that motivates us to maybe understand more, and then maybe to also even let it push us into the growth zone. So to really kind of use that adrenaline that you're kind of surging up once in a while to really get you into gear and really put yourself into a good place and grow from it. So,
and to use I'm not an expert in mindfulness-based techniques, but we're lucky to have some real experts in our community, and to learn from them to use some of those mindfulness-based skills to deal with the fear.
Yeah. And I have reached out to the mindfulness team. They are working on stuff. So hopefully stay tuned. And if you're watching this later, there might actually be links in the YouTube link below that can link you to some of the resources the mindfulness folks have put together. So hopefully we'll hear from them soon. And it's been lovely to talk to you. I think this is going to be a wonderful resource. Thank you for all your pearls of wisdom. And I mean, it's always nice to have someone who's a true expert in this area to give us some tips and tricks. So thank you so much. And any final words?
Well, thank you, Teresa, for this initiative, which I think is so important. Thank you for showing the leadership to distribute this. And I look forward to learning from other experts who you have on this channel. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. All right. Bye.